Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Man, it's been a long day for me. I work from 7 this morning until 8 o'clock, 8 p.m., that is, tonight. I'm not used to that for being an older guy. But I digress. So I was going through the interwebs and seeing what the news is and what we could talk about in the 2A. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was for those of you who are into ghost guns or making guns or manufacturing guns, putting together guns, gunsmithing yourself, doing what we've always been able to do since the beginning of the first, the country was founded, because there was no such thing as a gun manufacturer back in the gap. I saw something cool today. Recently I've seen a lot of Steyr AUG kits coming out, some of them around $400. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Steyr AUG. I think it's 80s cool. I've wanted one forever. But why is this cool? Well, DefCAD, if you don't know who DefCAD is, DefCAD are the guys that got in trouble with the federal government a while back, but then took them to court and made it legal for you to exchange CAD files or 3D print files for, guns, okay? Well, DefCAD has a Steyr AUG receiver that you can get from DefCAD to actually go ahead and take one of those parts kits and finish the gun. So it's something when I land a little better and have caught up on some bills, I'm probably going to try to attempt that. What's weird is in one of the news stories I saw today, from Mr. Guns and Gadgets. He's a neat guy, too. I think he's out of Tennessee or Kentucky or someplace. He's a pretty neat guy. But he's very legal, and he goes to a lot of cool stuff. Does a lot of very active in the 2A and keeps you very alert of what's going on. He posts every day, sometimes multiple times a day. He's a great source for New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. Love to meet the man. Just like I like to meet Mike from Mr. Guns and Gear, Brandon Herrera, a lot of these guys in the gun tube space, Tim from Military Arms Channel. Anyway, what is interesting is he did a little blurb, and I watched a little bit of it, and it's an interesting concept of what the federal government could possibly do here. They're actually looking at doing a NICS check for 3D printers. So because 3D printers could be manufactured, used to manufacture firearms and firearms accessories and firearms parts, the powers that be think, and this is an overreach of what I think they can actually do, and I don't know how they're going to do it, but I could see them trying to do it. But they're trying to get you to pass a NICS check if you purchase a 3D printer. Now, that doesn't help the thousands that are already out there in the world, or access to them in such spaces like you go to colleges, some schools, some libraries actually have 3D printers, and they don't really have any restrictions on what you do with them as long as you're just, you pay for your time and you pay for your materials, you can make whatever you need to. The idea here is to make manufacturing easier for mom and pop places. The big deal with 3D printing is that you can render something, make a prototype out of plastic or nylon plastics, even more stronger polymers, and you could get them to you can basically walk through the entire pieces, parts of what you're trying to manufacture. Now, in today's world, polymers can be used for a lot of things, and with things like Kevlar, impregnated polymer. I'm trying to speak too fast. This makes them more viable for a lot more things, especially in our 2A world. I'm one of those ANCAP people that actually believes that you should be able to print these guns. If you've ever checked out Print, Shoot, Repeat on YouTube, he's been getting more and more popular. He actually competed at Finished Brutality. But he did a story that was kind of interesting about Myanmar, where a military organization or a civilian military group, Patriots in Myanmar, was making polymer guns to fight back against these, the opposition, the big government, the communist guys that were trying to take over their country. And that is appealing to me, because instead of dropping Liberator, pistols like we did in World War II, or Sten or Brand guns, or we dropped Thompsons, we dropped M1s, we dropped everything in World War II behind enemy lines, so that the French partisans and any other partisan, the Polish partisans, could get a hold of weapons to get other guns. Meaning that the Liberator pistol, if you've ever seen one, the original Liberator, not the one that was made by DefCAD, was a stamped metal gun that had, 10 or 15 rounds in the butt of it, with a little manual that showed how to operate the gun, and a little dowel to pop out the round once you fired it. This was a single-shot gun with no riflings. The idea was this was a gun to get another gun off of a Nazi or anyone else in the European theater, and I believe they were even dropped in China and Indochina to try to allow the partisans to get guns. It was a cheap way that they could, I think it was like 50 cents or $1, to produce this in the entire material piece to drop Liberator pistols behind enemy lines. And they were used by the French resistance pretty often, actually, which is weird because they didn't survive very much after the war. They're worth a small fortune if you can find one. But it's interesting to think about the same type of concept going with in a modern day guys. Instead of dropping a gun, or a put together piece of material behind enemy lines, dropping files on file shares and allowing people to just manipulate them and produce them themselves. That is something that, you cannot stop the signal, despite what the government likes to think. You can look at examples in China. China has this thing called the Red Firewall that you're not supposed to be able to get past. But certain types of spyware that the American military has made allows you to do that. And there's a lot of other areas, where the government's really oppressive. And if our government in the United States ever gets super oppressive, this is something that you would actually consider here. These are the types of things we're thinking of nowadays, or at least I am, as we progress down our rocket slide towards whatever the unknown is. With the stuff going on in Israel, I could see the opposition. I can honestly see Hamas or Hezbollah doing some of these things, and they did it to some extent with their rockets, using parts to manufacture their own rockets. But I could see them manufacturing their own firearms, in addition to smuggling them in. It's better to have a completed firearm, to be honest, but anything in a pinch. Myanmar has deployed these in great numbers, these 9mm submachine guns, with great effect. If you think about the jungle environment of Myanmar, that makes sense, because you're going to want a submachine gun more than you would want something with an intermediate caliber cartridge. Speaking of cartridges, there's more development from the Lake City Arms, or Lake City ammunition manufacturer. There are two possibilities that I have researched since yesterday. One, and it seems very likely because the Biden administration has tried to do what I'm about to say. They have stopped Lake City Arms from Lake City. Why do I keep calling it Lake City Arms? Lake City Ammunition from producing ammunition before, and they're trying to do it again, I believe. That's why Lake City has pulled their ammunition for civilian sales. That, and considering all the stuff that's going on with Israel, Mr. Guns and Gear reported that ammunition prices went up anywhere from 7 or 8 to 10 cents a round for 5.56 or 223. Again, when bad conflicts happen, you can expect ammunition stores to go higher, to get the prices for ammunition to get higher, especially around like the 5.56, which is used by a lot of militaries, including our own. The second option that could have happened with Lake City Arms, and I think it's actually very plausible given today's environment, is that the Army is switching out from 5.56 to 6.8 SPC, or 6.8, I don't think it's SPC, it's 6.8 or the 277 Fury, the 6.8 millimeter, the new cartridge that they're starting to use in their XM7 rifles, which is the M7 rifle is what it's designated as. As they're switching that out, they are going to quit making 5.56 because the military is no longer going to be using it, because the Army and the Marine Corps are switching away from the 5.56 in favor of the 6.8 millimeter. So there will be a time and place that 5.56 will only be civilian manufacture and only be civilian use. I don't see that happening for many years, but I could definitely see, given the conflicts that are going on in the world, that American logistical teams that would be looking towards procuring ammunition would be trying to hot shot those rounds or put them into production faster, maybe even producing the rifles faster, because we don't know what the next step is going to be. And if the U.S. gets in a hot war, they're thinking they're going to want those guns sooner rather than later, because the people we would be fighting, either the Chinese or the Russians, I don't believe the Russians, but what I mean by fighting the Russians, they don't have body armor. You can look at the stuff that's going on in Ukraine, and their body armor is kind of hit and miss, piecemeal. Most of it's bought by the families of the soldiers themselves, because anything procured by the Russians has been co-opted and corrupted and lost, because corruption is that rampant in the Russian military. But the Chinese, however, have been seen deploying troops even in foreign theaters like in Africa to protect their Belt and Road Initiative with body armor that's comparable to ours. And the whole claim to fame behind the 6.8 is that it can defeat body armor. And that's why I could see them pushing it to the head of the line instead of keeping the 5.56 in play. Now, that sucks for all of us that are AR-15 guys or have 5.56 rifles of any kind. That means we're going to have to rely on civilian manufacturers, that is, to manufacture ammunition for us. And that's what's been going on in the 2A. The other thing I think that was kind of interesting, and I'll just mention this as a side note, is there is a councilwoman in New York that has been arrested, I don't know if she's bonded out yet, for exercising her 2A rights. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? Rules for thee, but not for me. That's how it seems to be. That's how the politicians like to think of it. Except for, it looks like someone actually stepped in and arrested them. Now, maybe this person, this councilwoman, is actually very pro-2A, and she was trying to make a point. Or maybe, she actually lives or works in a bad place. I would say if you're in New York, it would be a good idea to be able to carry a gun, just like it would be in anywhere in California nowadays, or any large city, because they seem to be rocket sledding to hell in every way possible in the larger cities. But I digress. So those are the stories I have for you tonight. Like, share, subscribe, be great.